You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. Building a business can be hard work, and for business owners across the Tampa Bay region, there's been an added disruption recently: hurricanes. Hurricanes Milton and Helene caused tens of millions of dollars of damage in Pinellas County businesses, and that number grows exponentially when you look around the rest of the region. Pinellas beaches are open for business, but hotel rooms are still closed along the beaches as some hotels await repairs. Even businesses that weren't physically damaged were still impacted. Sarah Schaefer, who lives in St. Petersburg, is a motivational speaker. She was getting ready to launch her business when Helene hit. The storm flooded her home.
The main snags have been really keeping myself level and energetic and enough to build while I'm bleeding, to launch while I'm still healing from this. And I think in some ways, the speed to which I kept it up, kept that momentum up, is really important. And I think that's the same with, our mental health or other things. It's like keeping a momentum, keeping an accountability.
Well, Schaefer shared her story with WUSF's Megan Bowman. Coming up, you'll hear from two people who are in the thick of helping businesses rebuild after last year's hurricanes and preparing for this year's storm season. Charlie Justice is the CEO of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. Charlie, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And Jennifer Biles is a business consultant with the Small Business Development Center at the University of South Florida. Thank you as well.
Glad to be here.
Charlie, I want to start with you. Your organization represents businesses along the Gulf Coast from Tierra Verde to Clearwater. What sort of businesses are part of the chamber?
We have about 800 members, and we have, obviously we're hospitality driven, but we have every kind of business you can think of, whether it's financial services, insurance, banking, along with the hotels, restaurants, cafes, and all the hospitality type attractions that you might expect.
It's been 7 months since Helene and Milton hit. Now, you've been in this role since, I think, the start of the year. So what have the last few months been like for you?
It's been out getting to meet and talk with our members and trying to meet with the ones who've been severely impacted. We've still got about 1,000 rooms on our beaches at our hotels that are still closed for various reasons. That's out of about 30,000, 35,000 county-wide rooms. And so it's really been something to see one business doing fine and back open and the business right next door completely still shuttered. And so that it's not one global problem that's, the same for everybody. It really is case by case. And so we've been trying to get with our members, see what their specific needs are and how we can connect them with the resources that they need to get back open and be successful.
Now, Jennifer, when there's not a disaster, how do you help people get their businesses off the ground or keep them going?
Well, at the SBDC at USF, we provide no-cost consulting for anyone looking to start or grow a business. So we can do that virtually or in person here on campus. We see startups. We can help with business plans. We can help with marketing, government contracting. The spectrum is very large into how we can help businesses.
And what's the focus been since, I guess, August last year?
Our focus really has been on providing the resources that these businesses needed to get back up and going, resources mostly financially. So we have helped them get their documents together to apply for those loans, and because that seemed to be what they needed the most was the money part.
Charlie, Debbie, Helene, and Milton affected everyone differently. What are some of the challenges that business owners in your chamber are going through?
It runs the gamut. So we've got some that are still fighting with their insurance companies. We've got some that got the insurance companies came through with the check, and they're dealing with the city maybe being slow on the permit. There's still hundreds of permits in the pipeline. Some of these small cities, they're used to seeing a handful of permits a month. Suddenly they have 400 in a day, and it overwhelmed them at the beginning, and they're finally just starting to dig out of it. Some of them own the business but don't own the property, and they're dealing with the property owner who is being indecisive and making that final decision. Am I going to scrape? Am I going to rebuild? Am I going to just try and sell the property? So case by case, it's very different. And so again, each one is a little bit different how we try and help them, connect them to the resources that they need. But it really has been hundreds of different stories that we hear every day.
Mm-hmm. Are there some problems that you've come across that you don't know what information they need because it's something you haven't dealt with before yourself?
We have a great staff on our team, and we have a great board that serves to be a backstop for that. It's primarily in those same categories. And some of it is like they just didn't have the right person at the city to call. So we connect them to the person in the planning department that can help them with the process. And again, by now, most of the cities have stood up. You walk in, there's a big sign, where to go for permitting and all those kind of things. So, but some of those were really slow at the beginning, really a challenge after the storms. Labor, some of the staff left, and if they are reopened, getting staff back, that's been a challenge, especially for our restaurants. And then it's all working together. So the restaurants are waiting to reopen until they see another hotel open, because that's 500 rooms, and they're waiting for that 500 rooms to come in because they need that trickle down. So, for example, last month when the Don Cesar reopened, it was a great day for us because restaurants could start making plans knowing, all right, we're going to have a good customer base. And then you probably saw this last week, we had a fire at our main shopping center on St. Pete Beach, and that was devastating. It took out a CVS and a Publix, obviously for the resources that they bring to bear, but also the foot traffic for all the small shops that surround them are going to be impacted. So we're working with them now to try and remind people the shopping center is open, come support those small businesses. And that goes to our global messaging of we still have people who call our office and go, are the beaches open? And the beaches are open. The beaches are beautiful. In fact, now more than ever, now that our tourist season is kind of waning down, we need our local residents to drive that extra little bit, come out to the beach and support one of our local businesses.
You're talking about permitting, and you were a Pinellas County Commissioner before this role. So what's it like sort of being on the other side of that permitting process?
Well, it really is that size and that expectation. So the small cities, some of them have contracted with the county. The county had the resources. They had a huge permitting department if you were a larger city. But again, some of these small cities, they weren't ready to handle that. They didn't expect it. I think that's been the thing that we're learning is how to recover. And it wasn't just the windstorm came in and the next day we're starting to rebuild. It took weeks to get out of the sand, to dig all that sand out. And then the infrastructure on the beaches as far as the plumbing and the pipes, the sand had gotten everywhere. So that kind of recovery. And it's a lesson for all of us for next time to be prepared for that with those permitting offices. The state legislature has passed some legislation that will improve the permitting statuses should we go through it again. But every time we learn something, but obviously there's a lot of days of frustration for our business owners.
Yeah. Jennifer, you mentioned documents as being pretty important for, having things in order or trying to find stuff after you've been hit by a disaster. What are some of the basic things that business owners need after a hurricane besides getting those documents?
Well, one of the documents that we've seen that if they're going to apply for any type of resources, lending, loans, they are going to need their IRS tax returns. Some people had not filed their taxes in the last 3 years, so that was an issue, as well as insurance documents, as well as we like to prepare and have people get a go box, hopefully, waterproof and something that does have even their documents on paper. I know that's kind of different, but having paper documents, having a thumb drive with everything they need, their license, their business license, their incorporation papers, things like that. And one of the main things that we saw is that they have everything online, but they could not remember any of the passwords to get to those documents. And
that's just an everyday problem.
That's
most
every
people have,
day.
right?
So if we could figure out some sort of system for them to have all of it in one place.
And you mentioned kind of keeping things like in a waterproof situation, like because some of these businesses and homes, right, on the beach side, they saw like the worst that can happen. Feet of water through the property and apocalyptic scenario. People may not want to think about the worst that can happen, but you kind of do have to put yourself in the mode of thinking about what is the worst that can happen. What do I need in this worst case scenario? Yes,
and we've seen that throughout. We haven't been hit in a while. So we don't like to prepare because we don't think it's going to happen to us. So really trying to get the word out that we need to be prepared just as a business, whether we get hit with a hurricane or just like Charlie said with a fire, that now those businesses might be closed around the Publix. It wasn't even their disaster, but it was Publix. And one of the other things too is thinking about your supply chain. I always say we need to be redundant and have alternatives. With our documents with our suppliers.
Right, because even if you haven't been affected yourself, your supplier might have. So you got to think of what's the worst that could happen there if you can't get the product you need.
Exactly.
Now, you've got a couple of mobile units, right? Or actually probably more than a couple that you send out after a disaster. Just kind of tell us about those, who staffs them up, what kind of help are people looking for?
Okay. Yes, we have we call them our MACs, our mobile assistant centers. So we have a big MAC, and then we have a little MAC. So we deployed those out. They're basically an RV equipped with internet and computers. We deployed them to Pinellas, our SBDC down there. We had it here at USF, and just the areas. We went down to Manatee. People would come on our disaster assistant buses to ask, what do I do? And some of them they weren't really a business, so they just wanted to talk to somebody. But for the most part, they wanted some sort of lending help. And we spent a lot of time, again, like I said, finding all the documents that they would need to get those resources that they need.
Yeah. You're listening to Florida Matters. We're with Jennifer Biles from the Small Business Development Center at the University of South Florida and Charlie Justice with the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. Coming up, hear how businesses are getting back on their feet and what they still need. This is Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. You're also hearing from Charlie Justice, CEO of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce, and Jennifer Biles, business consultant with the Small Business Development Center at the University of South Florida. Let's hear again from Sarah Schaefer. You heard from her earlier in the show, and she's a motivational speaker who is getting her business off the ground and at the same time dealing with a hurricane flooding in her St. Petersburg home. She talked to WUSF about meeting that challenge.
You are the asset, your mental health, your energy, your outlook. Like that is essentially, right, what you do at work, right? Your talent, your creativity, your ability. And how do you hang on to that when everything in the outer world has been rocked, right? When you have no routine. I remember breaking down and sobbing because I didn't have a spare hair tie. I had one hair tie and it broke, and I literally did not own a hair tie, right? Like, how do you push through those micro moments and keep your eyes locked on a larger vision of the future or a hope for yourself, for the community, for the world?
So, Jennifer, how do you push through those micro moments and stay focused on the business if you're also kind of coping personally with that disaster?
For me, I really think it's a mindset and that positivity and what we've seen here in the Tampa Bay area is people helping people. Mm-hmm. Those relationships, people coming together, taking food next door, whatever it may be. So for me, it's a mindset that actually, it may not look like it in the very moment, but we are making a difference, and that's where we're trying to go. And how can we build those relationships that can help us in the future?
Mm-hmm. Are there some things that business owners tell you they wish they knew or they wish they'd done before hurricane season?
For the most part, they wish they had at least prepared, just the preparation of the what ifs that could happen. We can help them with like a risk assessment, saying if this happened, what would you do? Mm-hmm. If this happened, where would you go? How would you get your employees back? Do you have suppliers? So for the most part, they wish they would have done a little bit of that planning that they didn't want to think about.
Mm-hmm. Charlie, the Beaches Chamber has been holding ribbon cuttings for businesses as they reopen. What is the story with that, and why is it important to kind of have these ceremonies, I guess?
Well, there's a lot to it. The ceremony is very simple, quick ribbon cutting. We take a picture, we post it. We believe part of our role as a chamber is to tell the stories of our members and to tell their story that they're back, that they're open. Obviously, that's business. We want people to come out and support the business. But I will tell you, I was at one for a restaurant, and the restaurant owner had tears in his eyes as we cut the ribbon. And it was symbolic that we were opening his business back, and he was, the money and all that part of it was there. But really, he had this love for food and sharing that with his customers, and he was going to be able to do that again. And he was kind of overwhelmed with emotion for that. And I tell you, the restaurant owners are probably some of the most resilient folks I've ever met in my life. They take the hits and they just keep on going. And so talking about those moments of stress and time, so many people, when there's these challenging times, they kind of withdraw into themselves in their own little worlds. But we saw it throughout our community last year that people reached out and they stepped up. And that was the silver lining in all of this. Even in my little neighborhood in West St. Pete, we talked to neighbors that we probably hadn't had a real conversation with in years, that you just kind of waved to on the street. Mm-hmm. We were out helping each other move fences and the the damaged trees and those kind of things. So, but we believe that for our businesses, we tell their stories, and it's symbolic that they're reopened, and it's continuing to tell the folks again outside the beach that our businesses are open, and they want folks to come by. You don't have to spend $100, $1,000. Come by, buy a cup of coffee at the cafe. Tell the owners that you're glad they're open. That personal word of encouragement means more than you could really imagine.
Thinking about that notion of community and how businesses are reopening and the support they're getting, I mean, does that kind of give you some hope for if, obviously nobody wants another storm to make an impact, but if that happens, how do you think, the response is going to be different next time?
Well, it's not going to happen again. We've guaranteed that not going to happen. So, but no, we learn every time we learn, and so that hopefully, if it ever happened again, that delay in the process will hit the ground running a little bit faster than last time. The chamber served before I came on. The chamber served as a hub for the community, whether it was coming in and plugging in your phone or as a resource for government supplies and those kind of things. We had water and everything in there. Mm-hmm. We were able to help facilitate grants. The Glazer Family Foundation has been wonderful with small business grants. We just got another round of grants checks in them yesterday. So $100,000 out to our small businesses. We can be a facilitator for that. So we want to be standing up, ready to go, so something like that. So when we're in the cone, we'll have a plan of attack, hopefully to respond better than last time. And that's what you want. Every time the response to be better.
It does take a while, though, right, for some of these businesses to rebuild and come back online. So what do you think needs to change to speed that up? And I'm guessing part of that may just be permitting, it may be kind of resources, but are there some things that could be done to sort of streamline that process so that come storm season, people are in a good state for it?
Yes, a lot of it is permitting, whether it's not just permitting after the fact, but there's some advanced permitting that perhaps some cities can offer as far as temporary. So if you know a storm, if you anticipate, you could have a conditional permit should the storm happen, to where you're not waiting days and weeks after the storm. Storm happens, you have a conditional permit ready to go. There's steps like that cities can take. But again, that legislation that's passed through the House and Senate waiting for the governor will mandate some of these kind of permitting exercises by our cities. And again, some of those small cities, you kind of feel for them because they just weren't ready for it. They have 2,000 or 3,000 people in the entire city. They didn't see that many permits all year, let alone getting them all in one day.
But you can have the county come in and offer a helping hand in that case, right, if they have the resources.
Absolutely, and that's what happened this year. The county was eligible for state and federal resources that some of these cities are not eligible for, and then they can share that with the other community. Mm-hmm. We saw that with a block grant that the county is working on right now, $800 million still for post-storm recovery efforts. That went to the entire county except for the city of St. Petersburg, which got their own grant. They're big enough to get their own grant. And we work with the county. I think about $200 million is anticipated to go to small business grants.
Mm-hmm. Is that enough?
You could always use more. And really, the biggest problem with the grant program is how long it takes. Anything you're talking about federal money, there's, all the processes. And unfortunately, that grant is not going to be offered until the spring of 26. So we're going to have some businesses that won't be able to hold on until the spring of 26. We need that resources today.
Yeah. Jennifer, are you involved in helping connect some of those businesses to that sort of grant funding?
Yes, we can, absolutely, with some chambers here as well. The main thing that we saw was the resources that the businesses could get took too long. And so what seemed like it would be a month, it ended up being 6 months, 8 months, maybe they don't even have the funds yet that they applied for. And so, you had asked Charlie, like, what could we do differently? And I think that there needs to be a little bit better process on those businesses getting some of the financial funds they need so they can start rebuilding.
Yeah, I guess people are, there's a balance, right? You want to make sure that that the money is going where it needs to go. Sure. So you're kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but there is an element of urgency too.
Yes.
Especially if you're running a restaurant or a hotel or something, like to Charlie's point, you can't hold on forever.
Exactly.
Charlie was also talking about, marketing, and that's pretty important in the tourism world. So how do you sort of see that piece? Like, what kind of help and advice can you give businesses that are looking to get the word out? If they've reopened recently, maybe people aren't aware of it. They've sort of stopping by that location.
Right. Again, if they're part of a chamber of commerce, that ribbon cutting saying they're reopened. also whatever their social media channels are. And that's where you, in the preparation, you're building that marketing channel, whether it's a social media channel, whether it's email marketing. So you've already built that up and you built your followers. So now when you say we are open, you have those people that are already there. So it's really the preparation. It's the marketing that we do for businesses, whatever your social media channel is, as well as email marketing.
Charlie, aside from just kind of getting a hotel or a restaurant rebuilt and refurbished and online again, I mean, there are going to be some sort of changes to the physical landscape of the beaches in some places, right? So what are some of the things that you see? Like, how is this environment going to look different once it's fully kind of back up to speed?
Well, there's two parts of it. One, every time we have a storm, whether it's a big storm or just it reshapes some of our southern beaches probably more than the northern beaches through Fort DeSoto and all of that. So you see channels open or channels closed over the years down in that area. We see a lot of, on the southern beaches in some of the cities, the older inventory, the small, what you think of as the traditional old Florida mom and pop motel, as they rebuild, if they can get permitting through some of the cities, the rebuild, when they are new, they're going to be much more resilient. They're going to be a little bit different. They're going to be raised up, but they're going to be more resilient for the storms to come. You see that the damage from South Beach to North Beach looks very different. Clearwater Beach, so many of their properties are newer properties. They are bigger, but they are raised up. They have the parking decks underneath. They were able to absorb that flooding much better than some of our southern properties that were at sea level. So they're going to have that kind of modern architecture. We want them to be able to withstand the next storm.
Right, but I mean, there must be a little bit of sadness seeing something like the Thunderbird going away, right? Because that's part of the charm of the place. Like these smaller, family-run establishments that attract people because it's a little more laid back.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's that balance that we talk about. But yeah, the Thunderbird. For those of you who go out Central Avenue all the way out to TI to Treasure Island to see that sign, they've said they're going to try their best to keep that sign, but obviously the building they had to demolish. They took so much damage. And that's one of those things we talk about because the Thunderbird is getting demolished and rebuilt. The Bilmar, literally 10 feet next door, is back open and serving customers again. So that's where we've seen it case by case, lot by lot. The impact of this storm was very different.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, you don't want to see kind of like those businesses where next door there might be an empty lot, right? That's not a good look. So you want sort of everything to come up at the same time, or at least eventually everything sort of on par. Jennifer, there is a whole economy around hurricane recovery too, right? So what kind of questions are people bringing to you right after a hurricane like Helene, Debbie, or Milton about what they can do to get into that business?
Right after a hurricane, we had a lot of businesses that were saying, okay, I am a tree trimmer. How can I be part of, this disaster cleanup? How can I do that? And if you're trying to do that in the middle of a disaster, it's too late. So we are recommending right now, if you want to be able to be a vendor for the county for any type of disaster cleanup, you need to get on the vendor list. You need to start that process right now. Because if not, it's too late. I mean, and you can, be a vendor with Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, but you have to start the process now.
And if you're a business that is looking to find somebody to help kind of repair, I mean, you have to be aware of bad actors out there potentially too, right?
Yes, and we did see that a lot, probably down where you were, Charlie, saw that a lot.
Absolutely.
Of saying, hey, yeah, we will come and clean up, and took their money and they did not come back. So there's vendor lists out there when they are on, registered with the counties. So, but at the time of, a hurricane, nobody's really thinking about that. They're like, we just need somebody to come in here and clean this up.
Yeah. Any advice, Charlie?
You want to make sure they're licensed. They have their, the Better Business Bureau is always good. The Pinellas County that has a licensing board for a lot of services. You want to go with a name that you've heard that you trust. The Chamber last year put together a list of restoration specialists that met those criteria. There's some big names that everyone knows, but there's a lot of companies out there. And certainly after storm, we were inundated with those kind of companies. But yeah, you want to have someone you trust. And it's hard. You got someone knocking on your door, and they'll cut your drywall, and you just want to get that back. And you want to make sure you're following the permitting process too. And again, some of our cities have really worked with our residents, even to after the fact, go in and help them get a permit after the fact if they did work. Some cities are doing better than others. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're doing it all right, because you don't have to face the penalties and damages and whole inspection stuff later.
Yeah, sounds like if you did have that list of good actors, those approved vendors, that could be something you could stick in your go box, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great idea.
And to that point, licensed, insured, and bonded.
Right.
Those are kind of the three key words.
So as we head into a new hurricane season, what are you thinking about? What's top of mind for you, Jennifer?
The top of mind for me is really getting the word out of let's have a business continuity plan, even if you're a small business. But let's put that plan in place. It doesn't have to be huge, but it can just be the fact that you have a list of your employees and an out-of-state contact for them if they leave, or 2 or 3 suppliers, vendors in different areas. So just getting those, again, I go back to the documents, in order so that we are ready.
And Charlie, what's keeping you up at night as we head into the 2025 hurricane season?
We have so many businesses that are still rebuilding, and so the having that kind of shock factor from last year, and if you're still working on stuff and you've got contractors there, and we get in the cone, and that mental stress that folks are going to feel. But to your point, it's really about being prepared to have a thought, have a plan to best address it. Every community on the beach, the city of St. Pete, Clearwater, the county, are all having workshops and expos on hurricane preparedness. And if you haven't gone to one of those before, this is the year to go check it out. You're going to learn something new, more than just throwing some sandbags in front of your garage, that there's better ways to prepare your property. But at the end of the day, remember that getting yourself and your family in safe place is much more important than anything, any building. And especially on our beaches, we have rules about getting on and off the beaches when the storms come. But remember that your family is most important.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We've been speaking with Charlie Justice, CEO of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. Charlie, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
And Jennifer Biles, business consultant with the Small Business Development Center at the University of South Florida. Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for this week. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Jackson Harp engineered this episode. Production assistance from Megan Bowman. You can subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcast and watch on YouTube as well. I'm Matthew Petty. Thank you for listening.